You think the danger was only in the glass? Think again. This whole city was a trap, and she was just a waitress, invisible to the world, until the night she saw something no one was meant to see. One stolen glance, one whispered warning, and her life changed forever. Now, caught between a billionaire's empire and deadly secrets, she faces a choice: stay silent and disappear, or risk everything to expose the truth. But in a world where everyone wears a mask, who can she really trust? Before we dive into this story, drop a comment telling us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. We always appreciate hearing from our community. Wishing you a beautiful day. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The city lights of Seattle stretched out like a sea of stars beneath the glass walls of the rooftop restaurant. The air was crisp but warm enough for the crowd gathered to celebrate a victory few outside this circle would ever understand. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering light like diamonds across the polished marble floors. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with the faint aroma of gourmet dishes, creating an atmosphere both intoxicating and tense. At the center of it all stood Marcus Ellery, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and headlines alike. Tonight he was celebrating the acquisition of a tech startup that would cement his empire's dominance in the industry. His tailored midnight blue suit fit him like armor, sharp and unyielding. His dark eyes scanned the room with the confidence of a man who had everything to lose and everything to protect. Around him, the Ellery family gathered like a carefully arranged chessboard. Evelyn Ellery, his mother, was the queen of this game, her icy gaze missing nothing. She wore a silver gown that shimmered under the lights, her posture rigid, her smile polite but cold. Beside her, Grant Ellery, Marcus's younger brother, nursed a glass of whiskey, his jaw clenched and eyes flickering with something close to resentment. Marissa Ellery, the sister, floated through the crowd with practiced grace, her sharp tongue hidden behind a mask of charm. The guests were a mix of investors, politicians, and socialites, all playing their parts in this high-stakes dance of power and influence. Laughter bubbled up here and there, but beneath it lay a current of calculation and suspicion. Everyone was watching, waiting for the next move. Behind the scenes, the staff moved like shadows, unseen but essential. Among them was Lila Monroe, a 27-year-old waitress with chestnut hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore the standard black uniform, but her mind was anything but ordinary. Lila had worked at the rooftop for nearly 3 years, learning to read the subtle shifts in tone, the hidden glances, the unspoken tensions that filled the air. Tonight, she was more alert than usual. Something about the energy in the room felt off. Maybe it was the way Grant's smile didn't quite reach his eyes, or how Marissa's laughter seemed sharper, more forced. Or maybe it was the new waiter, Cole Ramsey, who had started just last week. He moved with a soldier's precision, his every step measured and deliberate. Lila had noticed how he kept to himself, rarely speaking, but always watching. As she refilled a glass of champagne for a group of investors, Lila's gaze flicked to Cole. He was near the bar, his gloved hands steady as he arranged bottles with almost mechanical efficiency. But then she saw it. A quick, almost imperceptible exchange between Cole and one of the guests. A small slip of paper passed under the table. Cole's eyes darted around nervously, and for a moment, his mask cracked. Lila's pulse quickened. Something wasn't right. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres, but her mind raced. She caught snippets of conversation. whispers about deals gone wrong, threats disguised as jokes, and a name that kept coming up in hushed tones: Langston. A financier with a reputation for ruthless tactics, someone who could ruin empires with a single phone call. The celebration continued, but Lila felt the weight of unseen eyes on her. She glanced toward Marcus, who was raising a glass for a toast. His voice was steady, commanding silence. The room fell quiet, the clinking of glasses fading into a tense hush. As Marcus lifted his glass, Lila's eyes locked on Cole again. This time, she saw him reach into his pocket and carefully swap Marcus's wine glass with another. The movement was so smooth, so practiced, it sent a chill down her spine. Her heart pounded. She knew what she had to do. With a sudden, deliberate stumble, Lila collided with Cole, her tray crashing to the floor. The glass shattered, red wine spilling like blood across the marble. Gasps echoed through the room. Evelyn clutched her pearls, Marissa's eyes narrowed, and Grant's smirk flickered in the shadows. Marcus's gaze snapped to Lila, his jaw tightening. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear, and whispered, "Your drink was poisoned." The room erupted into chaos. The moment the glass slipped from Cole Ramsey's hand, time seemed to slow for Lila Monroe. The crystal shattered against the marble floor, sending shards and a dark red pool spreading like spilled secrets. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the elegant celebration fracturing into stunned silence and whispered accusations. Evelyn Ellery's hand flew to her chest, her eyes wide with shock and disdain. "Clumsy fool!" she hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Marissa's lips curled into a sneer, and Grant's smirk deepened, as if this chaos was exactly what he had been waiting for. Lila's heart pounded in her ears, but she didn't flinch. She met Marcus Ellery's piercing gaze across the room. His eyes, usually so cold and unreadable, were sharp and alert now, locking onto her with a mix of surprise and something else: trust. Leaning in close, her voice barely above a whisper, Lila said, "Your drink was poisoned." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Marcus's jaw clenched, and he straightened, raising his voice to command attention. "Everyone remain calm. Nolan," he called out, his tone low but urgent. From the shadows, Nolan Briggs, Marcus's security chief, stepped forward. A tall man with a scar slicing through his brow, Nolan moved with the quiet confidence of a former military operative. His eyes scanned the room, already calculating the next move. "Secure the area," Marcus ordered. "No one leaves until we know what's going on." Lila felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had just crossed a line, one that would pull her into a world far beyond the polished floors and glittering chandeliers of the rooftop restaurant. Nolan approached her, his voice steady but firm. "Stay close. We need to find out who did this." As the guests murmured nervously, Marcus's family exchanged glances loaded with suspicion and fear. Evelyn's smile was gone, replaced by a mask of controlled fury. Grant's eyes flicked toward the exits, calculating escape routes. Marissa's fingers tapped impatiently on the arm of her chair, her mind racing. Lila's gaze drifted back to Cole Ramsey, who had vanished into the crowd like a ghost. The new waiter was nowhere to be seen, and that only deepened the mystery. Nolan led Marcus and Lila to a private office behind the restaurant. The room was small, lined with dark wood and heavy curtains that shut out the city's glow. Marcus closed the door behind them, his expression hardening. "Tell me everything you saw," he said, his voice low. Lila took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Cole swapped your glass. I saw him reach into his pocket and switch it with another. He was wearing gloves. It was deliberate." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Why would he do that? Who sent him? I don't know, Lila admitted, but I saw him pass a note to one of the guests earlier. Something secretive. Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Nolan, check the security footage. Find out who that guest was and where Cole went after the swap. Nolan nodded and pulled out his phone, already tapping into the restaurant's surveillance system. I'll get to the bottom of this. Lila's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number. She ignored it, but the buzzing didn't stop. Another message popped up. Stay quiet, or you're next. Her breath caught. This was no longer just about a poisoned drink. It was a warning. Marcus noticed her tense expression. You're in danger now, he said quietly. But you're not alone. The door burst open, and Jamie Chen, Marcus's tech expert, hurried in. Young and sharp, Jamie was already scanning the room with a tablet in hand. I've pulled the footage from the main cameras, she said. But the segment showing the glass swap has been deleted. Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. Someone inside is covering their tracks. Lila's mind raced. She had never imagined her life would spiral into this kind of danger. Just hours ago, she was serving drinks and dodging rude comments. Now, she was at the center of a conspiracy that threatened to topple an empire. Nolan's phone rang. He answered quickly, his face darkening. There's been an incident, he said. Cole Ramsey's body was found in an alley near the restaurant. Shot. The room fell silent. Marcus's eyes flashed with anger and grief. This was no robbery, he growled. This was a hit. Lila swallowed hard. The stakes had just become deadly real. Outside, the city continued its indifferent hum, unaware of the storm brewing in the penthouse above. Lila felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a witness. A player in a game where trust was scarce and betrayal was deadly. Marcus looked at her, his expression unreadable. You're not leaving my sight, he said firmly. Lila nodded, knowing that from this moment on, her life would never be the same. The morning light filtered weakly through the heavy curtains of the safe house where Lila now found herself. The sleek, modern apartment was a far cry from her modest studio, but the sterile luxury did little to ease the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. She sat on the edge of the couch, replaying the events of the previous night over and over in her mind. Outside, Seattle's usual bustle carried on, oblivious to the storm swirling inside Marcus Ellery's world, and now hers. Nolan Briggs was already at work, his military precision evident as he coordinated with Jamie Chen, who was hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The two made an unlikely pair. Nolan, the grizzled security chief with a scarred brow and a no-nonsense attitude. Jamie, the young tech prodigy with a quick smile and sharper mind. Anything new? Marcus asked, stepping into the room, his presence commanding yet somehow less intimidating here, away from the glare of the public eye. Jamie looked up, her eyes tired but determined. We're piecing together what we can. The deleted footage was wiped clean, but we recovered fragments from secondary cameras. It confirms Cole was acting under orders. Nolan added, and those orders came from inside. Someone with access to the security system. Marcus's jaw tightened. Family or staff? Lila swallowed hard. She had spent the night thinking about the Ellery family, their smiles, their cold glances, the way they moved like predators in a gilded cage. She knew the truth was buried beneath layers of polished charm. I saw things last night, Lila said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. Grant was watching Cole closely. Not just watching, he was waiting for something. And Marissa, she was too calm, too calculating. Evelyn's smile never reached her eyes. They're all hiding something. Marcus's eyes darkened. You're right. The cracks are showing. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the soft tapping of Jamie's keyboard. Suddenly, Lila's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Another anonymous message. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. Her hands trembled. The threat was no longer vague. It was personal. Marcus noticed immediately. You're not safe here, he said, his voice low but firm. We're moving you. Before Lila could protest, Nolan was already packing a small bag. We have a secure location ready. You'll be protected. The thought of leaving her apartment, her life, felt surreal. But the ransacking she discovered earlier that morning left no doubt. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered, and her laptop was missing. Whoever had broken in was searching for something, or sending a message. As they drove through the city, Marcus's gaze was fixed on the road, but his mind was elsewhere. This isn't just about Cole or the poisoned drink, he said. Someone wants to take me down, and they're willing to destroy anyone who gets in their way. Lila looked out the window, the familiar streets blurring past. Why you? Why now? Marcus sighed. Because I'm a threat. The acquisition I just closed? It's more than a business deal. It's a challenge to powerful people who don't like being challenged. Nolan broke in. We've traced a large payment to Cole's offshore account. It's linked to a shell company registered under Grant's name. The car fell silent. Marcus's voice was cold. Grant's betrayal cuts deeper than I thought. At the safe house, the team gathered around a large table strewn with documents and digital devices. Jamie projected maps, financial records, and security logs onto the wall. We're dealing with a network, Jamie explained. Not just one person. Someone is orchestrating this from the shadows. Lila's mind raced. The family she had once seen as untouchable was unraveling before her eyes. But the deeper truth was more dangerous. This was a war for power, and she was caught in the crossfire. That night, as Lila lay awake, the weight of the threats pressed down on her. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a key player in a deadly game. And trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The rain had just stopped when the news came in. Cole Ramsey's body was found in a narrow alley behind a rundown warehouse near the waterfront. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, an unfortunate victim of the city's darker corners. But Marcus Ellery and his team knew better. Nolan stood by the window of the safe house, staring out at the gray Seattle skyline. This wasn't a robbery, he said grimly. The bullet wound was precise, execution style. Jamie nodded, scrolling through the forensic report on her tablet. No signs of struggle. Cole was targeted. Lila felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The man she had seen poison Marcus's drink was dead, silenced before he could reveal the full truth. But his death was only the beginning. Marcus paced the room, his mind racing. We need to find out who ordered this hit, and why. Jamie pulled up financial records, tracing transactions linked to Cole. There's a $50,000 payment to his offshore account just days before the incident. The money came from a shell company registered under Grant's name. The room fell silent. Marcus's jaw tightened. Grant. Lila's eyes widened. His own brother? Marcus nodded slowly. I need to talk to him. The confrontation took place in the Ellery family's oak-paneled boardroom, a room that had witnessed countless deals and betrayals. Grant sat behind the massive desk, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp. You think I had Cole killed? Grant asked, voice low but steady. Marcus didn't flinch. The money trail leads to you. Explain. Grant leaned back, a bitter laugh escaping him. You think I'm stupid enough to take the fall? No, Marcus. Someone else is pulling the strings. Who? Marcus demanded. Grant's eyes flickered with something darker. Richard Davenport, a former partner you ruined. He's the vulture circling your empire, and he's using me as a pawn. Marcus's fists clenched. If you're involved, you're finished. Grant shrugged, unconcerned. You don't know the half of it. Back at the safe house, Lila's role was shifting. No longer just a witness, she was becoming a key player in the fight to uncover the truth. She spent hours with Jamie, analyzing data, connecting dots, and piecing together a web of deceit that stretched far beyond the Ellery family. There's more, Jamie said one evening, her voice tense. Davenport isn't acting alone. He's backed by Reinhard Kessler, a financier with ties to Vanguard Holdings, a shadowy conglomerate with global reach. Lila's eyes narrowed. Vanguard? Jamie nodded. They use legitimate businesses as fronts for money laundering and influence. The European bistros Marcus acquired, they're part of Vanguard's network. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had imagined. Lila's apartment had been ransacked earlier, a clear warning. Now, threats were coming in more frequently. Anonymous calls, cryptic messages, and the ever-present feeling of being watched. But she refused to back down. Marcus noticed her resolve. You're stronger than you realize, he said one night. But you have to be careful. Lila met his gaze, unflinching. I'm not going anywhere. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous the game became. Sophie, the restaurant manager, was kidnapped, her car abandoned with a chilling note. Back off. A sniper's bullet grazed Evelyn Ellery's arm during a morning walk, a warning that even the family was not safe. Marcus's inner circle tightened, but trust was fraying. Michael Reed, the operations chief, grew erratic, his hands trembling during meetings. When Nolan caught him uploading files to an encrypted server, Michael pulled a gun on himself, leaving a note that read, "They own me." Lila's instincts screamed betrayal. He was a mole, she told Marcus. Someone bigger than Davenport is pulling the strings. Marcus nodded, impressed but weary. I need people like you. As the shadows lengthened over Seattle, Lila realized the question haunting them all. Who can you trust when everyone is a liar? The walls of Marcus Ellery's empire were beginning to crumble from within. The safe house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Paranoia hung thick in the air, infecting even the closest allies. Trust was a fragile commodity, slipping through fingers like sand. Marcus sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by Nolan and Jamie. The room was tense, the weight of recent events pressing down on them. We have a leak, Nolan announced grimly. Someone's feeding information to our enemies. Jamie's fingers flew over her keyboard, pulling up encrypted messages intercepted from within their network. The source is close. Too close. Marcus's eyes darkened. Who? Before Nolan could answer, the door burst open. A young aide, Michael Reed, stumbled in, his face pale and eyes wild. He clutched a folder tightly, his hands trembling. I have to tell you something, Michael stammered. They own me. They threatened my family. Lila watched him carefully, sensing the desperation beneath his words. Suddenly, Michael pulled a gun from his jacket. I can't do this anymore. Before anyone could react, he turned the weapon on himself. The shot echoed through the room, leaving a stunned silence. Lila's heart pounded. On the table lay a note, hastily scrawled, They own me. Trust no one. Marcus's face was stone. He was a mole. The revelation shattered what little calm remained. The enemy was not just outside. They were inside, embedded in Marcus's inner circle. Leela felt the weight of the moment. She was no longer just a waitress caught in a dangerous game. She was a key player, and the stakes had never been higher. "We need to act," Marcus said, his voice cold and determined. "We can't wait for them to strike again." Jamie nodded. "There's a gala next week. Victor Langston is hosting it. He's connected to Vanguard and the conspiracy. It's our best chance to gather evidence." Lila's eyes narrowed. "A secret gala? High stakes." Marcus looked at her. "We need someone on the inside. Someone who can blend in, observe, and report." Lila's heart skipped. "You want me to go undercover?" The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Lila trained with Nolan, learning to move with confidence and handle herself in dangerous situations. Jamie coached her on the tech side, how to discreetly record conversations, hack into secure networks, and stay one step ahead. Lila's transformation was striking. Gone was the nervous waitress. In her place stood a woman ready to face whatever came next. The night of the gala arrived, held in a grand mansion on the outskirts of Seattle. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, and the air buzzed with the murmur of the city's elite. Lila wore a sapphire gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair styled elegantly. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her senses sharp. She overheard whispers of deals, threats disguised as jokes, and the unmistakable tension of power plays. Every smile hid a knife, every handshake a secret. Victor Langston was there, tall, silver-haired, and predatory. His eyes scanned the room like a hawk, always searching. Lila kept her distance, but stayed close enough to catch crucial details. She spotted guards with concealed weapons, men exchanging briefcases, and a digital transfer scheduled to cripple Marcus's empire. The stakes were clear. This gala was the heart of the conspiracy. As the night deepened, Lila's courage was tested. A guard approached, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Thinking quickly, she engaged him in conversation, deflecting his questions with charm and confidence. When Langston finally stepped into a private study, Lila followed discreetly. Inside, she overheard plans to gut Marcus's empire and silence anyone who stood in their way. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Lila froze, heart pounding. Langston's voice cut through the silence. "You're persistent, aren't you, Ms. Monroe?" She turned slowly, meeting his cold gaze. The grand ballroom of the mansion was a dazzling spectacle of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars, casting a warm glow over the sea of tuxedos and gowns. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, and the low murmur of carefully measured conversations. This was a world where every smile hid a secret, and every handshake could seal a deadly deal. Lila Monroe moved through the crowd with the grace of someone born to this world, though she knew better. Tonight, she was a chameleon, blending seamlessly into the high society masquerade. Her sapphire gown shimmered under the lights, and her hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face perfectly. But beneath the elegance, her senses were razor-sharp, every glance and whisper catalogued and analyzed. Marcus Ellery and his team were stationed in a secure room nearby, monitoring the gala through hidden cameras and encrypted feeds. Jamie Chen's fingers flew over her keyboard, hacking into the mansion's security system to give them eyes and ears everywhere. Nolan Briggs stood guard, his military training keeping him alert for any sign of danger. Lila's mission was clear: gather evidence, identify the key players, and uncover the plans to destroy Marcus's empire. As she mingled, Lila caught snippets of conversation, whispers about offshore accounts, shell companies, and a digital transfer that would cripple Marcus's holdings. The guests laughed and toasted, oblivious to the deadly game unfolding beneath their polished exteriors. Her eyes locked on Victor Langston, the silver-haired financier who seemed to command the room with a predator's confidence. He moved through the crowd like a shadow, his smile cold and calculating. Lila followed him discreetly, weaving through clusters of guests until she reached a private study. She slipped inside just as Langston closed the door behind him. Inside, the room was dimly lit, lined with shelves of leather-bound books and expensive art. Langston's voice was low, but filled with menace. "The Ellery Empire is finished," he said, pacing slowly. "The digital transfer will wipe out their assets by morning. No one will see it coming." A man beside him nodded. "And the others who stand in our way?" Langston's smile was cruel. "They will be dealt with. Permanently." Lila's heart pounded. She fumbled for the small recorder hidden in her clutch, pressing the button just as the door creaked open. Langston turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Monroe," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I wondered when you'd show up." Lila's breath caught, but she kept her composure. "I'm just here to enjoy the party." Langston laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You're playing a dangerous game." Before she could react, the door burst open, and Marcus, Nolan, and Jamie stormed in. The room erupted into chaos. Langston lunged for a hidden pistol, but Nolan was faster, disarming him with a swift move. Marcus grabbed Langston by the collar, his voice icy. "Your empire ends tonight." The confrontation spilled into the grand hall, guests scattering in panic. Lila's quick thinking saved the day. She triggered an emergency lockdown, sealing the exits and preventing Langston's allies from escaping. Jamie hacked into the mansion's servers, downloading critical evidence of Vanguard's illegal activities. The team moved swiftly, knowing the danger was far from over. As police sirens wailed in the distance, Marcus turned to Lila, gratitude and respect shining in his eyes. "You did well." Lila nodded, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "This isn't over." The team escaped just as the authorities arrived, the mansion surrounded, and the conspiracy exposed. But the victory was bittersweet. Langston's network was powerful, and new threats loomed on the horizon. Back at the safe house, the evidence they had gathered was a weapon, a chance to dismantle the shadowy empire that had threatened everything Marcus had built. Lila looked out at the Seattle skyline, knowing this masquerade of lies was just the beginning. The city of Seattle was cloaked in a gray drizzle as Marcus Ellery stood alone on the balcony of his penthouse, the skyline stretching out before him like a battlefield. The victory at the gala had been hard won, but the war was far from over. The evidence they'd gathered was powerful, yet the true enemy was closer than he had ever imagined. Inside the penthouse, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Evelyn Ellery, matriarch of the family and queen of their empire, waited with a cold, unreadable expression. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her posture regal, but her eyes betrayed a storm beneath the surface. Marcus stepped inside, his voice steady but laced with steel. "We need to talk." Evelyn's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. "I suppose you've heard the rumors." "I know everything," Marcus said. "Your collusion with Langston. The deals you made to protect the family legacy." Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "I did what I had to do. Your ambition was reckless. You were going to destroy everything we built." Marcus's fists clenched. "By betraying me? By siding with the people trying to ruin us?" She shrugged, cold and unapologetic. "Sometimes survival means making hard choices." The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Marcus felt the weight of years of loyalty and love shatter in an instant. "I trusted you," he said quietly. "And you chose to stab me in the back." Evelyn's eyes flashed with defiance. "I chose the family." Marcus shook his head, the pain clear in his voice. "Not anymore." With a decisive motion, he stripped her of her influence in the company, severing the ties that had bound them. The family fractured further, the cracks now impossible to ignore. Lila watched the confrontation from the sidelines, her heart aching for Marcus. She had seen the strength it took to face such betrayal, and she admired him all the more for it. Their bond had grown stronger through the trials they'd faced together, but it was complicated, built on trust, respect, and the shared burden of survival. Later, as they pored over the decrypted files in the safe house, Marcus's gaze softened when it met Lila's. "You've changed everything," he said. "I don't know where I'd be without you." Lila met his eyes, steady and fierce. "You don't have to do this alone." But the stakes continued to rise. New threats emerged from the shadows, moles within their ranks, attempts to sabotage their efforts, and whispers of retaliation from Vanguard's remaining allies. One night, as Lila returned to the safe house, she found a note slipped under the door. "This isn't over. We're watching." The warning was clear. The fight for power, trust, and survival was far from finished. The desert sun blazed mercilessly over Phoenix, Arizona, as Marcus Ellery's team touched down. The city's heat was a stark contrast to the cool, gray skies of Seattle, but the tension in the air was just as thick. This was the heart of Victor Langston's network, the place where the final battle would be fought. Marcus, Lila, Nolan, and Jamie moved with purpose, their faces set and determined. The stakes had never been higher. The evidence they carried was enough to bring down the entire Vanguard conglomerate, but only if they could survive the night. Their target was a secret summit, a gathering of the world's most powerful and dangerous elites, hidden behind the walls of a sprawling desert estate. Invitations were rare, and security was tighter than a fortress. Dressed as arms dealers, the team blended into the crowd of mercenaries, tycoons, and shadowy figures. Lila's sapphire gown was replaced with sleek black attire, her hair pulled back into a practical bun. Every step was calculated, every glance measured. Inside the estate, the atmosphere was electric with suspicion and greed. Alliances shifted like sand dunes, and every smile was a mask hiding deadly intent. Marcus's eyes scanned the room, landing on Langston, who stood at the center of the gathering, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. His predatory smirk never left his face. The team split up, each moving to their assigned positions. Jamie hacked into the estate's security system, disabling cameras and unlocking doors. Nolan kept watch, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Lila's heart pounded as she approached Langston's private suite. She slipped inside just as the financier was pouring himself a glass of scotch. "You're persistent, Ms. Monroe," Langston said, his voice dripping with mockery. Lila didn't hesitate. In a swift move taught by Nolan, she disarmed Langston, the gun clattering to the floor. His smirk faltered, replaced by shock. Before he could react, Marcus entered, his voice cold and final. "Your empire falls tonight." Chaos erupted as guards stormed the suite, weapons drawn. Marcus and Nolan fought with lethal precision, taking down foes, while Jamie worked furiously to upload the incriminating files to global authorities. Lila fired a warning shot, buying time as she and Marcus made their escape through a maze of corridors and secret passages. Outside, a helicopter waited, engines roaring against the desert night. They climbed aboard just as explosions lit up the estate behind them, signaling the collapse of Langston's network. Back in Seattle, the fallout was immediate. Authorities raided Vanguard's fronts worldwide, arrests were made, and the empire that had threatened Marcus's life and legacy began to crumble. But the victory was bittersweet. The scars of betrayal and loss ran deep, and new challenges loomed on the horizon. Victor Langston's arrest sent shockwaves through the world of high finance and power. The sprawling Vanguard network, once a shadowy force controlling empires from behind the scenes, was dismantled piece by piece. Marcus Ellery's empire, battered but unbroken, stood as a testament to resilience and justice. Back in Seattle, the city's skyline glittered beneath a clear night sky, a silent witness to the battles fought and won. But the victory had come at a cost. The Ellery family was fractured beyond repair, Evelyn stripped of her influence, Grant exiled from the business, and Marissa retreating into silence. The legacy Marcus had inherited was forever changed. On the rooftop of the Lexington Tower, where it all began, Marcus and Lila stood side by side. The cool breeze carried the scent of rain and possibility. The city sprawled beneath them, alive and waiting. Marcus looked at Lila, his expression softer than she had ever seen. "You saved me. Not just my life, but my purpose." Lila met his gaze, steady and fierce. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the kiss they shared was more than a spark of romance. It was a pact, a symbol of trust, alliance, and a shared mission to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Lila had left waitressing behind, stepping into a new role as Marcus's chief strategist. Her instincts, courage, and sharp mind were now the backbone of the empire's future. Together, they rebuilt, not just a business, but a vision of power tempered by integrity and trust. As they stood on the rooftop, the city lights reflecting in their eyes, the question that had haunted them both lingered. If power demands sacrifice, is it worth the fight? For Marcus and Lila, the answer was clear. Trust was their power, and they would fight for it. Together. If this story gripped your soul and kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to smash that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into courage, betrayal, and the fight for justice. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for the truth.